Click here to start from the beginning.
All children, except one, grow up. They soon know that they will grow up. This is how Wendy Darling found out. She was playing one day in the garden of number 14, where she lived with her mother and father and her brothers John and Michael. Wendy plucked a flower and ran to her mother with it. She looked so delightful that Mrs. Darling put her hand to her heart and cried,
"Oh, why can't you stay like this forever?"
From then on, Wendy knew she was going to grow up. The children had a very special nurse to look after them. It was a large Newfoundland dog called Nana. She had belonged to no one in particular until the Darlings engaged her. Nana had always thought children important and proved to be quite a treasure of a nurse. Even her kennel was in the nursery. It was a joy to see her escorting the children to school. She would walk sedately by the side when they were well behaved, butting them back into line if they strayed. Usually she would be carrying an umbrella in her mouth in case of rain. The children loved her and would do anything for her. There never was a happier family until the coming of Peter Pan. Before we meet Peter, let me tell you about the Neverland. That's the magic place where children go when they dream. Every child's Neverland is different. It is always an island with coral reefs and savages and gnomes and caves through which a river runs. John's Neverland had a lagoon with flamingos flying over it. Michael, who was very small, had a flamingo with lagoons flying over it. John lived in a boat turned upside down on the sands. Michael lived in a wigwam. Wendy had her own house, made of leaves sewn together. It is all rather confusing, especially as in Neverland, nothing ever stands still. You can always play at being in the Neverland. By day, you do it with chairs and a tablecloth, and then it is not in the least alarming. But in the 2 minutes before you go to sleep at night, it becomes very nearly real. The Neverland has many strange things, but nothing more strange than Peter Pan. Every night, Mrs. Darling would tell the children a bedtime story. One evening, while she was telling a story, she became aware of something moving outside the window. She could have sworn it was a small boy. Yet that was impossible.
"How can it be?"
she said to herself.
"The nursery's on the 2nd floor."
She read on.
"The wicked witch began to spin a magic."
Again, she thought she saw something move. But when she looked up, there was still no one there. When the story was over, she took up her sewing. But in the warm room she slowly drifted off to sleep. Suddenly, a boy dressed in green came flying through the window. And with him came a ball of light, which darted round and round the room. Mrs. Darling woke with a cry, and Nana came bounding in. She sprang straight at the boy, who quickly leapt out of the window. But he was not quite quick enough to stop Nana snatching his shadow from him. Mrs. Darling examined the shadow carefully, but she found it was quite the ordinary kind. Nana had no doubt at all what was the best thing to do with the shadow. She wanted to hang it out of the window. It was as if she was saying, "He is sure to come back for it. Let us put it where he can get it easily without disturbing the children." But Mrs. Darling did not want to leave it hanging out of the window. She thought it looked so like the washing, and if she hung it out, it would lower the whole tone of the house. Instead, she rolled it up and put it away in a drawer. She decided not to tell her husband what had happened. She knew all he would say would be,
"That's what comes of having a dog for a nurse."
The next night, as the children slept, a bright light came in through the window, searching here, there, and everywhere for Peter's shadow. It was really a tiny fairy. She was called Tinker Bell because she talked in little bell sounds. A moment later, in came Peter.
Tinker Bell, where are you?
He called softly.
Do come out of that jug and tell me where they put my shadow.
He was answered by the loveliest tinkle of golden bells. It was Tink telling him in fairy language that his shadow was in the drawer. He quickly found it, but in his delight he absent-mindedly shut Tinker Bell in the drawer. Then, try as he might, he could not get his shadow to stay on. Poor Peter. He was so upset he burst into tears. Peter's sobs woke up Wendy. She didn't seem surprised to see him. He walked towards her and asked politely,
What's your name?
Wendy Moira Angela Darling.
She replied.
What's yours?
Peter Pan.
He said. She was already sure he must be Peter, but it seemed such a short name.
Where do you live?
She asked.
Second to the right and then straight on till morning.
Said Peter.
What a funny address.
She said.
Is that what they put on letters?
Don't get any letters.
He said, and she wished she hadn't asked.
But doesn't your mother get letters?
Asked Wendy.
Don't have a mother.
He said. He felt he didn't need a mother.
Oh, Peter, no wonder you were crying.
Said Wendy. That made Peter cross.
I wasn't crying about mothers.
He said.
I was crying because I can't get my shadow to stick on.
Luckily, Wendy knew what to do.
It must be sewn on,
She said. Wendy got her needle and cotton and thimble. Then she sewed the shadow back onto Peter's foot.
I dare say it will hurt a little.
She warned him.
Oh, I shan't cry.
Said Peter, who told himself that he had never cried in his life. So he clenched his teeth and did not cry. When it was done, he said,
Wendy, one girl is worth more than 20 boys.
I think that's perfectly sweet of you.
She said, and offered to give him a kiss. Peter didn't know what she meant, so he held out his hand expectantly.
Surely you know what a kiss is?
She asked, with some surprise.
I shall know when you give it to me.
He answered, rather stiffly. Wendy didn't want to hurt his feelings, so she gave him her thimble.
Now, I shall give you a kiss.
He said, taking an acorn and dropping it in her hand. Very politely, she said that she would wear his kiss on a chain round her neck. It was lucky that she did put it on a chain. One day soon, it was to save her life. Peter started telling Wendy how he had never wanted to grow up and how he had run away the day he was born to live with fairies. Suddenly, he heard a tinkling sound from the chest of drawers and rushed over to it. Wendy followed him.
That's Tink.
He said.
That's a fairy language.
He opened the drawer and Tinker Bell flew about the nursery in a fury.
Oh, the lovely thing!
Cried Wendy, but Tinker Bell was jealous of Wendy for being Peter's friend and tinkled back rudely. Peter ignored her.
I live in the Neverland now,
He said.
with the lost boys. They fell out of their prams as babies. No one collected them, so they were taken to Neverland. But there are no girls. Girls are too clever to fall out of prams.
Peter said,
One night, I came to the window to hear your mother's stories. She told a lovely one about a prince who couldn't find a lady who wore a glass slipper.
Peter,
said Wendy.
that was Cinderella, and he found her, and they lived happily ever after.
Peter was so glad that he rose from the floor and started floating over to the window.
Where are you going?
Cried Wendy, not wanting him to leave.
I'm going to tell the other boys.
He said.
Do come with me.
Wendy hesitated.
But I can't fly.
She said.
I'll teach you.
Said Peter.
And I'll teach John and Michael too, if you like.
Oh, how lovely.
Wendy was so excited, she called to her brothers straight away.
Wake up.
She called.
Peter Pan is going to teach us to fly.
I say, Peter, can you really fly?
Asked John. Peter didn't bother to answer him. Instead, he just flew around the room. It looked so delightfully easy. They tried to do the same. But each time they went down instead of up.
Not like that,
said Peter.
Just think lovely, wonderful thoughts, and they lift you up in the air.
But they still couldn't fly an inch. Then Peter blew some fairy dust over them.
Just wiggle your shoulders and let go,
he told them. Michael was the first to try again. And this time, he managed it.
I flew!
He shrieked while still in mid-air. Just then, they heard Nana barking and the sound of Mr. and Mrs. Darling on the stairs. Peter knew there was no time to lose.
Follow me!
He cried and at once soared out into the night. One by one, the others followed him. What fun they had on the way to the Neverland, just missing the tops of tall trees and narrowly avoiding lofty church spires. Peter even showed them how they could sleep in the air and just float along.
Tell him to stop showing off,
Said John, which didn't please Wendy.
You must be nice to him.
Said Wendy.
What could we do if you were to leave us now?
But John said if the worst came to the worst, all they had to do was to fly straight on, for the world was round, and so in time they must come back to their own window. Strange to say, when they arrived over the Neverland, they all recognized it at once. They shouted out to each other.
Look, John, there's the lagoon.
Michael, there's your wigwam.
Wendy, look at the turtles!
But their progress through the air began to get slower and slower. It was as if they were pushing their way through hostile forces.
They don't want us to land,
Said Peter, but when Wendy asked him, he wouldn't say who they were. Then,
There's a pirate down there.
Who is the captain?
asked John, and Peter answered,
Hook!
Michael began to cry, and John could only speak in gulps, for they seemed to know who Hook was.
He's the worst of them all.
John whispered.
He was Blackbeard's bosun, and the only man he ever feared.
That's him.
Said Peter.
What's he like? Is he big?
Not so big as he was.
Replied Peter.
I cut off a bit of him.
You?
Said John.
Yes, me.
Said Peter sharply.
What bit did you cut off?
His right hand.
Then he can't fight now.
Oh, can't he just? He has an iron hook instead of a right hand. He claws with it. Every boy who serves under me has to promise this. If we meet Hook in open fight, you must leave him to me.
I promise.
John said, loyally. Meanwhile, the return of Peter Pan had woken the Neverland and stirred all its inhabitants into life. If you put your ear to the ground, you would hear the whole island throbbing. The lost boys were out and about looking for Peter, their captain. There are the twins, then Nibs, Curly, Slightly, and Tootles. Poor Tootles, take care. There is danger in the air for you tonight. Tinker Bell is bent on mischief. She is on the lookout for a boy who can be easily tricked. The pirates are out looking for the lost boys, and what a villainous-looking lot. Here is Cecco, the Italian who once cut his name in letters of blood on the back of a prison governor. Then Gentleman Starkey, at one time employed as an usher at a public school. And the Irish boatswain Smee, oddly friendly and gentle, and the only man Long John Silver ever feared. And last comes Captain James Hook himself. This is the terrible man against whom Peter Pan is to battle. Who will win? And on the trail of the pirates are the redskins creeping silently down the warpath. They carry tomahawks and knives, and their bodies gleam with paint and oil. Leading them is the bravest of the brave, Great Big Little Panther. And there, in the rear, which is the place of greatest danger, is Tiger Lily, who is a princess in her own right. Last comes a gigantic crocodile, and he is the hungriest of them all. We shall soon see who is his intended dinner. The boys were hoping Peter would return with another story. Slightly said,
I wish he would tell us if he knows anything more of Cinderella.
And Tootles said,
I'm sure my mother must have been very like Cinderella.
it was only when Peter was away that they could talk of their mothers. As they talked, they heard a sound getting louder and louder. It was the grim song of the pirates.
Yo-ho-ho, the pirate life, the flag of skull and bones, a merry hour, a hempen rope, and hey for Davy Jones.
At once, the lost boys. But where are they? I'll tell you. They are already safely in their home underground. Look at the trees. Each has a hollow trunk as large as a boy. No wonder Hook has never been able to find them. As the pirates advanced, Starkey saw one of the boys disappear and drew his pistol. Hook stopped him firing.
Put that back.
He commanded.
The noise would bring the redskins. Besides, he is only one of them, and I want them all. Look for them!
Most of all, he wanted Peter, who had fed his arm to the crocodile.
I have often
Said Smee.
noticed your strange dread of crocodiles.
Not crocodiles! That one crocodile!
Hook corrected him.
It liked my arm so much it has followed me ever since. It would have had me before, but it swallowed a clock. Before it reaches me, I hear it ticking and run for it.
Hook sat down on a large mushroom. It felt curiously warm. He jumped up.
Odds, bobs, hammer and tongues, I'm burning!
He shouted.
This must be the Lost Boy's chimney.
Hook and Smee examined the mushroom. It was much bigger than any they had seen before. Smee tried to pull it up. It came away in his hands, for it had no roots. Stranger still, smoke began to come out of the hole in the ground. And more than smoke, they could hear the voices of children chattering.
Did you hear him say Peter Pan's away?
Said Smee. Hook nodded.
I have a plan.
He said.
We'll cook a rich cake with green sugar and leave it on the shore. The boys will find it and gobble it up. Having no mother, they don't know how dangerous it is to eat rich, damp cake. They will die.
And he burst into laughter. But he stopped short when another sound was heard, louder and louder. Tick, 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 tick. Hook stood shuddering.
The crocodile!
He gasped, and the two pirates dashed away for safety. Once more, the boys emerged into the open. Nibs, who came last, suddenly stared upwards.
Look,
He cried,
I have seen a wonderful thing. It's a great white bird and it's flying this way.
What kind of bird?
asked Curly.
I don't know,
said Nibs, rather awestruck.
but it looks so weary. And as it flies, it moans. Poor Wendy.
I remember now.
Said Curly.
There are birds called Wendy's.
Then Tink flew down, telling them in her bell-like voice, Peter wants you to shoot the Wendy. Tootles lifted up his bow and arrow. Quick, Tootles, quick, screamed Tink. Peter will be so pleased. Excitedly, Tootles fitted the arrow to his bow and aimed into the sky. Then he fired, and Wendy fluttered to the ground with an arrow in her breast. Tinkerbell at once darted into the trees and disappeared. Tootles stood over Wendy like a conqueror, shouting,
Peter will be so pleased with me.
but Nibs was not so sure, saying,
I think it must be a lady. And you have killed her.
At this tragic moment, Peter returned.
Great news, boys.
He cried.
I have brought a mother for you.
Then he saw Wendy. Quickly he took the arrow from her heart and demanded.
Whose is this?
He looked at Tootles.
Oh, cowardly hand.
He said, and raised the arrow to use as a dagger. Tootles did not flinch.
Strike me.
He said. Then Nibs shouted.
See, the Wendy lady lives.
Slowly, Wendy raised her arm. Peter knelt beside Wendy and found his acorn on the chain round her neck.
See, the arrow struck this kiss I gave her.
He said.
It has saved her life.
He turned to Tinkerbell, who was flying back and forth overhead.
Listen!
He cried.
I am your friend no more. Be gone from me forever.
She flew on his shoulder and pleaded. He relented.
Well, perhaps not forever, but at least for a whole week. Shall we carry Wendy down to our house?
Asked Curly.
No.
Ordered Peter.
Let's build a house round her. Quick, each of you bring the best of what we have.
In a moment, they were all as busy as tailors before a wedding. While they were preparing the ground for Wendy's house, who should appear but John and Michael? John rubbed his eyes and muttered to himself,
It's really true. We did fly.
You may be sure they were very relieved when Peter came up to them.
Hello, Peter.
They both said,
Hello.
said Peter, in a friendly enough tone. But really, he'd quite forgotten about them. He had been very busy measuring Wendy with his feet to see how large a house she would need.
Is Wendy asleep?
They asked Peter.
Yes.
He replied,
John,
said Michael.
let's wake her up and get her to make supper.
But Peter ordered them in his most captainy voice.
Help us build the house.
Build a house?
Exclaimed John, looking very puzzled.
Yes,
Said Peter.
for Wendy. You've got to help build it. Now, away with you.
All the boys set to with a will, and John and Michael joined them to hack and hew and carry. The wood was alive to the sound of axes, and branches were quickly piled up to make the walls, and immediately roses started growing up them. Then the roof went on. But wait, what about a chimney?
It certainly does need a chimney.
Said John, importantly. So Peter snatched the hat off John's head, knocked out the bottom, and put the hat on the roof. The little house was so pleased to have such a capital chimney that, as if to say thank you, smoke started coming out of the hat. Now, all that remained to do was to knock at the door.
All look your best.
Peter warned them.
First impressions are awfully important.
He was glad no one asked him what first impressions were. They were all too busy looking their best. He knocked politely. Now, the wood was as still as the children. Not a sound could be heard, except from Tinkerbell, who was watching them from a branch and openly sneering. Then the door opened, and a lady came out. It was Wendy. She looked properly surprised, and this was just how they'd hoped she would look.
Wendy lady, be our mother!
They cried.
But I have no experience.
She said.
That doesn't matter.
said Peter.
What we need is just a nice motherly person.
Very well.
She said.
Come inside at once, you naughty children. I am sure your feet are damp. And before I put you to bed, I have just time to finish the story of Cinderella.
That was the first of many happy evenings they had with Wendy. She became their mother and took care of them. She fed them on breadfruit, yams and bananas washed down with Popo. She would spend every spare minute darning their clothes. She even stopped them eating the terrible pirate cake and so saved their lives. As time wore on, she worried little about her parents. She was, however, concerned that the boys were forgetting about them entirely. Still, they had a wonderful time and plenty of adventures. There was, for instance, the adventure at the lagoon. The Lost Boys would often spend long summer days in the Mermaid's Lagoon, swimming or floating most of the time and playing mermaid games in the water. Usually they would rest on a rock for half an hour after their midday meal. It was called Marooner's Rock, because evil captains would put sailors on it and leave them to drown when the tide rose and it disappeared under the water. One day, as they rested in the sun, the sound of muffled oars could be heard approaching the rock. Peter sprang to his feet. He stood motionless, holding one hand to his ear.
Pirates!
He cried. Then,
Dive!
the boys did as they were told. Then a boat arrived containing 2 of the pirates, Smee and Starkey. And with them, tied up hand and foot, was Tiger Lily. Peter, hiding in the water, saw the pirates tie the Indian princess to a stake. He heard Smee say,
That's all we need to do. Let her stay here and drown.
but Peter had a plan to save her. The easiest way would have been to wait until the pirates had gone, but he was never one to choose the easy way. Instead, imitating Hook's voice, he called out,
Ahoy there, you lubbers! The captain!
said the pirates, staring at each other in surprise. Smee called back,
We put the redskin on the rock, Captain. Set her free!
came the astonishing answer.
Free? This is queer.
Said Smee.
Better do what he orders.
Replied Starkey, and in moments Tiger Lily was free to slide like an eel into the water. Peter was about to crow in triumph when another voice rang out. This time, it was the real Hook. He swam up to the side of the boat and shouted,
Where is the redskin? We let her go,
said Smee.
It was just as you ordered. Let her go?
Shouted Hook, his face black with rage.
I gave no such order.
The 2 pirates fidgeted uncomfortably. Hook raised his voice and screamed,
Spirit that haunts this dark lagoon tonight, can you hear me?
Of course, Peter should have kept quiet, but of course he did not. He immediately answered in Hook's voice.
Odds, bobs, hammer and tongues, I hear you.
Smee and Starkey clung to each other in terror. Hook shouted from behind the rock.
Who are you, stranger?
He demanded. The voice replied,
I am James Hook, captain of the Jolly Roger. You are not! You are not!
Hook cried.
Brimstone and gall.
Called the voice.
Say that again, and I'll cast my anchor into you. Hook!
Called the real captain.
Have you another voice and another name?
I have!
Shouted Peter. So pleased he had kept the pirates guessing, he called out,
I'm Peter Pan!
He suddenly appeared above Hook, who swung his claw at him and shouted,
We have him! Take him dead or alive!
Twice the iron hand clawed at Peter, who defended himself bravely. Then, when it seemed he was going to win the fight, a very white-faced Hook turned and started rowing furiously towards his ship, closely followed by the crocodile. Now, Wendy joined Peter on the rock. She saw that he had been badly injured.
Look,
Said Peter.
the water's rising. This rock will soon be covered. Hook has wounded me. I can neither swim nor fly.
Do you mean we shall both be drowned?
Gasped Wendy. Just then, Peter felt that something was brushing his leg. It was a kite Michael had made a few days before. Peter pulled it towards him.
It can carry you to safety.
He said, and tied the tail round Wendy. In a few minutes, the wind bore her towards land. Now, Peter was alone and facing drowning. He stood with a smile on his face, a drum beating within him, as he said,
To die will be an awfully big adventure.
As he stood watching Wendy carried away, something floated towards him. As it came nearer, he saw it was a never bird paddling towards him on its nest. She had come to save him by giving him her nest. But he didn't understand.
What are you quacking about?
Peter asked, getting rather irritated. The bird tried to tell him to get into her nest and let it drift ashore with him in it. The bird seemed determined to save him. At last, she ran the nest aground and flew away, sacrificing her eggs for Peter. Now he understood what she wanted. At once, he picked up a hat left behind by Starkey, tucked the eggs into it, and watched as it floated away. The Neverbird was so pleased. And so was Peter, who got into the nest and let the tide take him back to the shore. There was much rejoicing at Peter's return. Since he had rescued Tiger Lily from a dreadful fate, there was nothing she and her braves would not do for him. They would sit on guard outside the boys' underground home, awaiting the big attack by the pirates, which they knew could happen at any time. They even called Peter the Great White Father, which he liked very much. We have now reached the evening that was to be known as the Night of Nights, because of what was going to happen. The Redskins were all at their posts. Below ground, Wendy and the boys were having their evening meal. Peter went off to get the time. The way you got the time on the island was to find the crocodile, and then stay with him till the clock struck. That night, before they went to bed, Wendy started telling them a good night story that was to change everything.
There was once a lady and gentleman called Mr. and Mrs. Darling.
She began.
They had 3 children and a faithful nurse called Nana. But one day the children flew away to the Neverland, where the lost boys are. Just think of all those empty beds, and think of how their parents felt.
It's awfully sad.
Said Tootles.
How can it possibly have a happy ending?
If you knew how great is a mother's love, you would have no fear.
Said Wendy. She had now come to the part in the story that Peter hated.
They knew their mother would always leave the window open so they could fly back.
Said Wendy.
So they did.
Wendy, do let us go home!
Cried John and Michael excitedly.
We shall go at once.
Said Wendy.
Peter, will you make the necessary arrangements?
Peter, hiding his anger, went to ask the Redskins to guide them out of the forest. But the Lost Boys were terrified over losing Wendy.
Let's keep her here.
I chain her up.
Wendy thought quickly and said,
If you all come, my mother and father will adopt you.
Then they all shouted for joy. When Peter returned, they begged him.
Peter, can we all go?
Bitterly, he agreed.
Tinkerbell will take you across the sea.
He said.
Wake her, Nibs.
He held out his hand to say goodbye. Wendy took it and noticed there was no indication that he would prefer a thimble.
Lead the way, Tinkerbell.
He called, and she darted up the nearest tree. But no one followed her. For suddenly, the air above them was rent with the clash of steel as the pirates made their dreadful attack on the Redskins. Tiger Lily and Panther had managed to escape the pirates, but Captain Hook was not very interested in them. It was Pan, Wendy, and the boys he really wanted, but chiefly Peter Pan. The thought of finally capturing his enemy made his iron claw twitch. Sounds could be heard below ground, but the trees seemed too narrow for the pirates to climb down. Hook put his ear to one of the tree entrances and listened. He heard Peter saying,
If the Braves have won, they will beat the Tom-Tom.
Hook looked across at Smee, who was sitting on a drum the Indians had left behind, and signalled him to beat it. He was fiendishly delighted to hear Peter cry,
That Tom-Tom! That means an Indian victory!
Moments later, the children emerged from the trees. They ran right into the waiting pirates and were captured. Peter was still below ground and knew nothing of what had been happening. Believing himself safe, he drifted off to sleep. He was thus defenceless when Hook, finding one of the tree holes just big enough for him, crept down and found him. For a moment, Hook paused. Then he caught sight of Peter's medicine cup. From his pocket he pulled a bottle of deadly poison, which he carried in case he was captured. He poured it into the cup, and then just as silently crept out. Moments later, Peter was awakened by the arrival of Tinker Bell, who was very excited.
What is it?
He asked.
Out with it!
She told him of the captured children.
Wendy's on the pirate ship!
He cried.
I'll rescue her!
Then he remembered he had promised Wendy he would always take his medicine and picked up the cup. Tink furiously tinkled a warning at him.
Poisoned? By whom?
He asked, but he still ignored her and raised the cup to his lips. Tinker Bell darted between his lips and the cup and drained every drop of it. Tinker Bell was dying. Peter bent his head over her and tried to catch what she was trying to say to him. Her tinkling voice was now so low that at first he could hardly hear it. At last he made it out.
You think you could be well again if all the children believed in fairies?
He asked. She nodded. So Peter looked around him anxiously. There were no children there. But he called to all who might be dreaming of Neverland. He knew they were nearer to him than you might think. Boys and girls in their pyjamas and nighties, even little toddlers in their cots. To them all, he called out,
If you believe, clap your hands. Don't let Tink die.
Tink fancied she heard cries of yes, and her light brightened. Then, gradually, came the sound of clapping from around the world. Tink was saved. Her voice grew stronger. Then she flashed through the room, more merry and impudent than ever. Peter, dagger in hand, cried,
Now to rescue Wendy. It's Hook or me this time.
Hook's ship, the Jolly Roger, was lying at anchor in Kidd's Creek. For Hook himself, this was his moment of triumph. By now, Peter would be dead, and soon he would make the boys walk the plank, and that would be the end of them. Wendy, tied to the mast, was disgusted to be on such a filthy ship. She could see that it had not been scrubbed for years. She felt like writing with her finger on one of the grimy portholes.
Dirty pig!
Smee sidled up to her.
See here, honey.
He whispered.
I'll save them if you'll be my mother.
But Wendy snapped back.
I would rather have no children at all.
So now the boys' fate was sealed. Wendy hoped that they would take their last little walk like gentlemen. But suddenly there came a sound. It was the terrible tick, tick, tick of the crocodile. Everyone looked at Hook. Hook froze in terror at the ticking.
The crocodile's going to board the ship.
He cried.
Hide me.
In an instant, all the pirates vanished. Then came the biggest surprise of this night of nights. For it was not the crocodile that climbed onto the deck, but Peter Pan. He had cleverly imitated the sound of the crocodile's clock and now stood proudly on the deck. Then, signalling to the boys to make no sound, he tiptoed below just in time. The next moment, Smee returned and shouted,
It's gone, Captain. All's well.
Hook came back on deck and was ready to continue with the boys.
We'll give 'em the lash first.
He cried.
Starkey, go fetch it.
Starkey went below. Then came a most dreadful screech, followed by a crowing that the boys knew came from Peter. When Starkey failed to return, the pirate's blood froze.
The captain's as black as a pit.
Said Smee.
There's something terrible in there. The thing you heard crowing. Smee,
Growled Hook.
go and fetch me that doodle-doo.
But Smee backed away. While Hook wondered what to do next, Peter found another way out of the cabin and went on deck and cut Wendy's bonds. Then, taking her cloak, he stood in her place while Wendy hid behind the boys. Then Hook cried,
I've thought it out. There's never any luck on a pirate ship with a girl aboard. Fling her in the sea.
To Wendy he shouted,
There's none can save you now, missy.
There's one who can.
came a voice from the cloak.
Peter Pan, the Avenger.
Peter dropped the cloak and with sword in hand called.
Out, boys, and at 'em.
Then, facing Hook, he cried.
Boys, this man is mine.
Hook was no match for Peter, who quickly knocked his sword out of his hand. Now that he had no sword to fight with, Hook realized there was no hope left. But he was not quite finished yet, and he was determined to see Peter in bad form while there was still life in him. Abandoning the fight, he rushed into the cabin where he kept the Jolly Roger's store of gunpowder and set light to it. Then he came out and shouted with glee,
In 2 minutes, the ship will be blown to pieces.
He looked at Peter. Now, he thought, true form would show. But brave Peter dashed into the cabin, picked up the powder keg, and then calmly threw it overboard. We are now approaching Captain James Hook's last moments on this earth. Seeing Peter advancing on him with his dagger, he sprang onto the plank prepared for the boys. Had he looked about him more closely, he would have seen the hungry crocodile rather impatiently waiting for him in the water far below. Instead, however, he looked back at Peter. Then he bent over, inviting a kick instead of a stab from the deadly dagger. Peter obliged. He swung his foot and, in very ungentlemanly fashion, kicked the defeated pirate right over the side. As he fell, Hook jeeringly cried,
Bad form.
then went straight to the crocodile. Captain James Hook, farewell. Now the battle was over, and the ship was in the hands of the children. Next morning they were sailing for home. Peter, of course, was the captain and took his place at the wheel.
I hope you'll all do your duty as gallant sailors.
He called out.
But I know you're the scum of the Gold Coast, and if you snap at me, I'll tear you apart.
They cheered him and set sail for the Azores. Once there, it would be a much shorter distance they would have to fly. They expected to be home a week on Thursday. Home. It seems a shame we should have neglected number 14 all this time. What, in the meantime, had been happening to Mr. and Mrs. Darling? Mrs. Darling had kept the house always ready for the children, and the window was always left open for them. She was sure that one day they would fly back home. That evening, Mrs. Darling had just left the nursery and didn't see Peter and Tink arrive.
Quick, Tink.
Whispered Peter as Tink helped him close the window.
Now, when Wendy comes, she will think her mother has barred her out. She will have to go back with me.
Music could be heard coming from the room downstairs, and he peeped in to see Mrs. Darling playing Home Sweet Home.
You'll never see Wendy again, lady,
he cried. Then the music had stopped, and he peeped in again. Now he saw that 2 tears were sitting on Mrs. Darling's eyes. 2 more followed them.
She's awfully fond of Wendy,
he said to himself. Then he relented.
Oh, all right,
he said, and flew up and opened the nursery window.
Come on, Tink.
He called.
We don't want any silly mothers.
And they both flew away. So it was that when the children arrived, they found the window wide open and were able to fly in and get straight into their beds. When Mrs. Darling came back in, she saw her children in bed with the lost boys standing in a silent row.
Mother!
Cried Wendy.
Why, that's Wendy.
Said Mrs. Darling, sure it was a dream.
Mother!
That's John.
Mother!
And that's Michael.
Suddenly she knew it was real.
George! George!
She cried, and Mr. Darling came in to share her happiness. Then Nana came bounding in. They agreed at once to adopt the lost boys, and there could never have been a happier sight, except, that is, for the strange boy who could be seen at the window. He had joys innumerable, but now he stared in at the one joy from which he must be forever barred.